Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Hibiscus Motorsports. I'm very sorry about my voice right now. I'm starting to get over a cold I've had for the past couple of days. So again, I'm sorry about that. But as you read from the title, we're going to be doing a full video on whether or not, the Miata is the right car for you. Obviously, doing research on any car you're looking at buying is crucial before you buy it. YouTube is a fantastic, tool to see, what people who have owned these cars, their experiences, all that, the pros, the cons, driving experience, things like that. So in this one, we're going to be talking about some positives, some basic negatives, including some basic issues and known little issues with these cars. And then we're going to be talking about a track, motorsports style thing as my Miata. If you've never been to my channel before, my Miata is a track-built NA Miata. So I'll be able to give, my opinions on how these are for track cars, autocross cars, the weekend warriors, or a dedicated race car, things like that. So I hope you guys really enjoyed the video, and without further ado, let's get into the pros and cons. Alrighty, so getting into the first positive about these cars is the aftermarket. So obviously you've heard people say if you've ever, if you're interested in Miata, I'm sure you've looked it up, you obviously know parts for these things are everywhere. They're everywhere and for everything. So for example, if you want to build your Miata for track racing like mine, there are parts everywhere for it. I mean, just for example, it's a little hard because the rear windows are fogging, or the rear window is fogging. But just as an example, I have a 9 Lives Racing rear wing kit for a Miata. That's just an example of a racing part made specifically for the Miata. So if you want to build it for racing, there's tons of suspension upgrades. Everything imaginable for these cars you can buy, Companies make everything. There's turbo kits, supercharger kits, standalone ECUs, even things like digital dashes. Even if you want to just put, either like a gauge where the air vents are, or even if you just want a different looking air vent, you want a different center console, anything and everything is imaginable for these cars. If you want to build a Miata for drifting, there's angle kits. I've seen companies start coming out with dual caliper rear kits for a handbrake. There are handbrake mounting kits I've seen, like Hydro e-brake handbrakes. You want to build your Miata, just keep it stock. You want like OE style parts. Everyone still makes, stock control arms, stock sway bar bushings, stock end links, everything and everything. And then even taking your Miata off-road. A company, for example, Paco Motorsports, makes a lift kit for Miatas. You've seen them everywhere. People have lifted Miatas. They're all over all social medias, all that. You know what I'm talking about. These things are anywhere and everywhere. Mazda made millions of these cars, obviously. There's aftermarket is crazy for them. And on top of that, how many parts you can get is aftermarket for these cars aren't even that expensive. For example, things like exhausts. There are cars out there that in a catback exhaust for it would be like $2,000. My catback exhaust for my Miata was $450, not on sale. I got it on sale, but $450 for a 2.5-inch catback exhaust is a very good price, and it's not a cheaply made exhaust. It is full stainless steel. The welds are incredible. It's crazy to me how cheap you can get parts for these things. Now, obviously, the very high-end, top-tier parts are pretty expensive, but, comparing, even suspension kits from these cars to, to other cars, it's like a half to a third the price, it's crazy to me, but definitely, just one huge positive if you're looking at buying a Miata is aftermarket will be around now. It's around in a immense quantity, and it will be around forever. And the price of aftermarket for these cars is so much cheaper than other popular platforms out there on the market right now. So another positive about Miatas is the community. Now, I know this isn't so much necessarily about the car itself, but obviously, if you're going to be buying a project car, or maybe you just want looking at a Miata as a daily, you could daily one of these if you didn't need a lot of cargo space or anything like that, or you didn't have a lot of people you're driving around. You definitely could daily one, though. They're very comfortable cars, but we'll talk about that later. Is the community of cars, the people who own these cars are just amazing people, Obviously, in any car community, you're going to have some bad apples, but, don't let a couple bad apples ruin the bunch, I have never met a single person who has owned a Miata who is not a good person. I have met tons and tons of people. I've met people at car shows, met people at the track. I've met people even at a gas station where I'm getting gas in this thing. Just people are everywhere who own these cars, and everybody is a nice person with these cars. A couple personal examples from me. Maybe about 2-3 months after I got this car, I was driving it around. I stopped at a stoplight, and an older woman in a NC Miata, pulled up next to me at the light and started talking to me, because this is before I had my hard top, all that, so I had the soft top down like a lot of people do, obviously. It's a convertible, may as well enjoy it. But she started talking to me, just sitting at the red light. I had never met her before. She never met me, had no idea who she was. But she never even told me her name, but told me her whole story about how she bought a 1990 Miata right when it came out, and then she sold that for a NB Miata when those came out, then sold that for her NC. And she told me in that month, this was a while ago, but she told me in that month that I met her, that she was going to be trading in her NC for a brand new ND Miata. Just like, and then even like another example, at the track, when I first ever took my Miata to the racetrack, I had an issue with it that I'll talk about in the common issue section, because it is a pretty common issue. I had an issue with at the track, and I didn't know anything about it, because again, this car, again, is my first ever project car, first ever car I learned manual and all that. So when I first, bought it, there were things I didn't know about it. I knew a little bit, but not nearly as much as I know now. So I was having an issue, and I didn't even ask anybody there, because be honest, I was a little too scared to ask anybody. But people who were just walking by, other people at the track who had Miatas, saw me and overheard me talking to a couple of my friends about it, and they immediately came over and tell me, "Hey, this is the issue. This is why it's happening, and this is how you fix it." I never met these people, didn't even know who they were. But just people just immediately came over and just gave me a helping hand with it. And on top of giving the helping hands like that and things like that, I noticed that when it comes to stuff like that, a lot of Miata people are really nice in like a pay-it-forward style way. So as an example for me, because of what those guys taught me about my Miata with that, at the second to last track day that I did, I was able to help somebody who had just bought a Miata a couple months, prior. It was his first time taking it to the track, and he was having the exact same issue as me. I was able to tell him, again, hey, this is why it's happening, this is how you fix it, and, this, maybe a way how to prevent it, things like that. But, people are super, super nice with these cars. I know a lot of car communities have really, really nice people, but I have truly never met a bad apple among Miata owners. Obviously, there are people who don't own Miatas who don't like these cars, and that's fine. There are people who own Miatas and don't like Miatas, that's fine too. But I personally have never met somebody who has one of these cars and is just genuinely a bad person to other people. So if you're a little bit nervous about buying Miata for a car community, trust me, I've owned my Miata now for 2 years. These cars, actually, 2 years is in about 10 days, so it's about to be 2 years, so I'm very excited for that. But trust me when I say Miata people are they're truly, truly incredible people. Alrighty, so now let's get into what you guys who came to this video for, about buying a Miata. This is obviously a watch before style video. Here's probably the biggest reason you guys want to know is huge positive of these cars is driving them. Let me tell you, if you've never driven a Miata, you have to before you're you can't get in one of these things or anything like that. You have to drive a Miata. There's a lot of, people on the internet like to go, oh, they're really, really slow, or it's just a worse S2000. That's not true. It's not true at all. I assure you, these things are so much fun. Obviously, if you're looking at a Miata for a street style or like straight line car, obviously it's not going to beat things like a WRX or like an Evo or a Mustang. It's not going to be anything like that. But these cars are driver cars. These cars feel amazing to drive. They give you tons of feedback When you drive a Miata, you know what it wants to do. You know what it wants you to do. It tells you. It speaks to you. Obviously, your Miata is not just, a mouth isn't going to pop out of nowhere and just go, oh, hey, hit the brakes now. That's obviously not what I mean. I mean is that just like, you can feel when, like, for example, if you're racing a Miata on a track, and, maybe, or like if I'm driving my Miata on the track, and maybe I go to turn to a corner and I don't let off the brake early enough, the car, I will know that happened. I will know that is what's going wrong during that corner. I know that, oh, hey, I didn't let off the brake early enough. I know that I can feel how the cars are reacting to this. I can feel where the car is in the track. I know there's a lot of other cars. This isn't Miata specific, but I have been on track in a lot of other cars that just feel like a brick. They have no feedback, nothing. You just turn the wheel, hit the gas, hit the brake, and if you spin, you don't know why you spun. I've been on the track in a lot of cars like that. Miatas are not like that. These cars are truly driver cars. And another nice thing about Miatas is that, in my opinion at least, it's more fun to drive a slow car fast than a fast car slow. Like, Miatas are momentum cars. These things, obviously it's not a 0 to 60 car, but if you keep your momentum up, you don't need to brake as hard for corners or things like that on track racing in these cars. I'm just using the track as an example, as that's what I do with my Miata. Obviously, in other forms of motorsports like drifting or off-roading, things that's not going to apply. Or, for street driving, obviously that's not going to apply. But, obviously, if you're looking at buying a Miata, most people want to buy it to have some fun with it. I highly recommend taking it even to like an autocross. That's so much fun. But these cars are truly, truly, truly driver's cars, and you just can't go wrong with buying one if you want to just enjoy a driving experience. Alrighty, so now we're going to get into a couple of the negatives about Miatas. Like I said, this one can go either as a positive or a negative, depending how you look at it. I personally think it's a positive, but if you're looking at daily driving, one of these things is size. Like I just said before, you totally could daily drive it, but you do need to be careful. This is a negative really only for people who are looking at daily driving it, or if you want a fun car that you can fit all your friends in. Miata's obviously not going to be that car. These things are very small, and another thing is that you have to be careful on public roads in them, as people might not be paying attention or things like that. So you're a very small car. If there's like a lifted truck, they probably can't see you. So just, you have to have a little bit more of a caution and be a little more observant when you're driving one of these on public roads. But as long as you're observant, like I said, in my opinion, it's not really a negative, but just for the people who might be a little bit concerned, coming from a 2 years of Miata ownership, yes, I can promise you right now, I have been cut off on public roads by people. People haven't seen me before. Like if I'm on the highway and they're merging into my lane, don't let me scare you away with that, because that happens on the rare occasion. That doesn't happen every day or anything like that. But it does happen, obviously, even in my Volvo, but when I had, my Jeep, all that, I've been cut off and all that from people. But it does happen slightly more in a smaller car, obviously. It's harder for them to see you. But, so depending how you look at it, could be a negative or positive, but I just wanted to throw this in there for anybody who was concerned. So yeah. Alrighty, so another negative about Miatas, especially in the older NA Miatas, is these cars have issues with paint. Now, what I mean by that is, like, if you've noticed, you might see a lot of Miatas with, like, their clear coat peeling or paint peeling up, things like that. And coming with paint issues, I'm also going to lump this in here as rust issues. Miatas definitely rust. A lot of old cars like this rust. Obviously, it's not exclusive to Miatas, but if you're looking to buy a Miata, these things can get crusty. The main cause of this is, for the soft tops, there are drains that get clogged very, very easily. That's really how a lot of convertibles work. The soft top drains get clogged. Water and just junk gets caught up in there, and the rear fenders begin to rust from the inside out and then rot. These cars don't just rust and stay there. No, the rear fenders will rot out. These things, like I said, if they're not taken care of, Miatas can just be snapped in half from rot. There is an NB Miata that I see a lot. It is a silver, excuse me, sorry, a silver NB Miata. I've seen it up close in person. Let me tell you, I have seen that car's rockers. I could probably just put my fist straight through it with no effort. So definitely a negative. You have to take care of these cars. If you own one, if there's any rust on it, make sure it's, take care of it, sand it down, repaint it, all that. And then definitely, if you're going to, look at getting one of these cars, clean out those rear drains, all that. So, yeah. And then, obviously, if the paint's peeling or chipping away, it can expose metal. That can create, obviously, oxidation and rust. So, mixing, just like peeling paint, but at the same time, this paint, can be 30 years old if you get a 1990 Miata. So, depends how you look at it. The paint doesn't really hold up the best. I've noticed a lot of paint chips on my car, and mine is about 25-ish, something like that, years old. So just, something you got to keep in mind if you're looking at these cars, but definitely not a good thing. So another negative about Miatas, this is what I was talking about before with the issue that I've had. A common issue on these cars is the valve train ticking. Now, if you don't know what that is when the camshaft that opens up the valves, when it actually hits and pushes, you can hear the metal on metal sometimes. Now, these cars are very, very, very finicky, and like not so much finicky, but they're very demanding of constant, frequent oil changes. Miatas are not the car you want to own if you are, if you forget about oil changes, things like that. The head of these engines, they'll tell you if you're late on an oil change. And then on top of that, my issue at the track, not censoring it now, was I overheated my oil. Miatas don't have an oil temperature gauge from factory. That's why I installed an oil temperature gauge on my Miata. They don't come with a factory. So I went out there on the track without an oil cooler. I wasn't even pushing my Miata that hard, but I came off track and it was ticking really bad. I thought, at first I thought maybe I had rod knock. It wasn't rod knock, obviously. But that is something you have to keep in mind with these cars is do oil changes. When I take my Miata to the track, I have not done an oil change in this car where the oil has seen more than like 1,500 miles. I know that sounds a bit overkill, especially for a street car engine, but I just like to take care of my Miata when I take it to the track. I do oil changes every track day. You don't have to do that from what I've seen. I've seen people who go to the track who do like a couple track days on a Miata, on like the smaller autocross tracks, things like that, and they're okay. But if your Miata's like a street car, 3 to 4.5 miles is what I'd say would be good for oil changes. And then Miata's, like, from the manual it says do 10W30 oil. You can run anything from 0W30 to 10W30. I usually, when it's a warmer, when I'm just, if I'm not doing track racing, I'll usually put 5W30 in my car. Obviously, I'm not going to break down oil science right now because that could be an hour-long video. But you don't have to just run 10W30 if that's not available for you. Just obviously try not to mix the types of oil and try to usually stay with one brand. You don't want to be jumping around a lot, but definitely, keep that in mind. That is a huge downside of these cars is the very, very noisy and ticking heads that can come with, just like wear, or just if your oil changes aren't frequent enough, or if the oil's too cold or too hot. So definitely a downside. Alrighty, so another common issue with Miatas that can be a negative about them is the soft tops. So I personally don't have my soft top anymore. I deleted it when I got my hard top, all that. Actually, it was when I pulled out most of the interior in this car is when I got rid of it. But the NA Miatas have a plastic rear window from factory. Mine had a crack in it when I got it. I folded it down once and it cracked even more. So you just have to be careful that plastic gets really, really brittle, especially if it's colder outside. It can crack immediately. The NB Miatas, I know some of them have the plastic, some have the glass windows. The glass is obviously a little bit more reliable, but it's a little bit heavier, and also you just have a big sheet of glass, obviously, so make sure you're careful with it if you fold down the top. But those tops, they get old, they can stretch out, they can tear, and then, or the what's called the rain rail on them can fail or crack. So the rain rails, when water hits the soft top and then goes down the back of it, it goes down into the rain rail, which then sends the water to the water evacuation holes that I was talking about before. But if those crack, water can just spill into your trunk or, into the back deck of the Miata. So obviously, again, it's an old, like, they could be, 20, 30-year-old soft tops. Obviously, they're bound to, show their age, but they are a bit difficult to install a new one if you've never done it before, if you buy a Miata with one with a rip or something like that. So definitely, just keep that in mind about these cars. But in my personal opinion, I wouldn't let something like a soft top stop you from buying, the perfect Miata for you. Alrighty, now we got the Miata up and running. Let's take it for a little bit of a drive, and let's talk about performance and things like that, and how it actually feels to drive one of these cars. Alrighty guys, so now we are behind the wheel of the Miata. I'm sorry if it's going to be a little bit hard to hear me right now, as again, I have fully deleted all of any sound deadening in here, anything like that, so it does get a little loud in here over bumps on the road, things like that. But I wanted to give you guys my honest opinions after owning a Miata for 2 years on, driving it on public roads, driving on the highways, racing it, all that. Now, I want to address the elephant in the room, and that is the car community saying that Miatas are slow. Now, I'm going to say this, because a lot of the people who say Miatas are slow have never owned a Miata before. Let's be honest. It's the same people who say rotaries are unreliable. 99% of them have never even owned a rotary before. They probably don't even know how a rotary works. I'm not trying to throw shade or anything like that. I'm not saying that, that's how everybody is, but I've met some people at car shows and even at the track who are like, oh, your Miata's slow, or, oh, why would you buy a Miata? It's a slow car, it's a bad car. My 800 horsepower, Evo 10 could easily beat that thing in a straightaway. Well, yes, obviously it could. But the Miata does not get its fame of a race car from its horsepower, obviously. These cars are fast when it comes to momentum. They're fast on a track and corners, things like that. Tight corners are the Miata's bread and butter. These things are kings on tight tracks. So, for example, I have been, at track days. I have bullied Corvettes, I have bullied Mustangs, I have bullied S2000s on the track, where I've been faster than them, It's just, the Miata is not a slow car when you look at it from a performance standpoint of racing. If you're looking at drag racing or, street cars, then yes, it's slower. But I can promise you guys this right now, from my ownership for 2 years of a Miata, this thing is not slow. It's a pretty fast car, especially on the track. Like, Miatas are lightweight. Yes, the 0 to 60 is, between 7-8 seconds. That's not fast. That's not really quick. But again, these things are not 0 to 60 cars. They are just fun cars that carve corners like pretty much nothing else. Alrighty, so here now I wanted to give my opinions, my thoughts and opinions on the car. Things that, bumpy. Things that, I enjoy about owning the car, things I don't really enjoy from my personal experience. So, we're going to start with pros. Number one, I love what these cars look like. Just a simple little thing cosmetically. I think these things look really, really, fun. They look cute, they're small, but these things are monster cars hidden in it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. They're hidden. What they do well. And that's another thing I like about these cars, is that you look at these things, and you don't expect a lot from them, but you can make these cars unlike anything else. It's a little bit foggy, so I need to roll down my window so I can actually see, so I turn. But, like my Miata is a track monster, and you can see it from the outside. I have a huge splitter and air dam. Everything's quick release. I built everything up front myself. I have a huge wing in the rear, but even a Miata with no aero, anything like that, just good suspension, these cars are incredible driving. And that leads into my next point, is how well these cars drive. These are driver cars. I know I'm going to be echoing a lot of the pros and cons I said before in the video about Miatas, but I truly mean it when I say that Miatas are driver cars. That nothing on the road drives, like this. They're just such fun, nice cars to drive. Now, going into it, some more stuff about Miatas is they're really easy to maintain. In my 2 years, I've never had any, catastrophic failures, anything like that. I've, beat this car. When I race it, I rev it almost to the rev limiter. I'm revving it to like 6,500 RPMs. These things, they can take it. You know, people make 300 wheel horsepower on stock engines, you know, and they can take the abuse. So these cars are really, really easy to work on too. They're super easy. You know, a lot of people have owned them. You know, they've made videos on them on YouTube, for example. Pretty much anything you'll ever need to do, you can look up a video on, but they're super straightforward cars. Mazda designed these things really, really easy to work on, which is really nice. The engineers didn't over-engineer anything to make it too complicated. So that's another really nice thing. Now, some cons I've had with the car is obviously the oiling issues with the head, you know, the camshafts and the valves ticking. That's been an issue I've had to deal with a couple times. I installed a massive oil cooler on my car, and that got rid of most of that. It hasn't done it before unless it's been cold outside or on like a cold start after a long time. So, you know, obviously I've had that's the issue before. Another issue I've had is, right now, if you notice in the background, my Miata kind of clunks a little bit when I turn. That's because the bushings on the control arms are binding up on the eccentric bolts that hold the control arm to the car. It's those bushings are old, they're stock. I'm going to be getting new ones to replace them, but that's really the only big issue I've ever had with this car. You know, another issue I've had before is idling issues. Nothing to the point where it would stall out, but when I change my battery, the idles kind of would drop really, really low, then lift up. If you're curious, look up idle droop on any Miata forum. You'll find it immediately. What fixed mine, the first ever time I got idle droop was a bad O2 sensor. The second time was just... basically, you know, with the little issues I've had with the car out of the way, I just want to give, you know, my final thoughts and opinions on, you know, as, you know, owning a Miata for 2 years, should you buy one? Short answer, 100% yes. If you're on the fence about buying one, do it. You'll never regret it. Now, I will say, I've only ever driven an A8 Miata, so a NA Miata, you know, pop-up headlights with a 1.8 liter inline 4. I've been in NB Miatas and I've been in NA6s, but I've never driven any of those before, so I can't say, you know, what my favorite generation is, but they're all very, very similar cars, especially the NA and the NB Miatas. They're on the same chassis. They're so similar of cars that as long as you find a clean one in the generation that you like, you know, that's all that matters. You know, the generations don't mean a ton to it. It's really just comes down to the car that you like. Some basic advice about it, I'd say, is that, you know, if you're looking at buying one of these, definitely make sure it's clean, make sure it's not, you know, really, really rusty or rotted. You know, like I said about the oil thing with the valves and the camshafts, you know, just make sure that it's gotten its maintenance done. Just very basic, you know, if you're buying a used car things, make sure it's just overall nothing's, you know, sketchy or shady about it, any you know, weird work that's been done to it that somebody did. As you know, it's as much as it is positive, it can also be a negative with how many of these cars there are. They often kind of get people like to buy them and then go, oh, I'm going to spend $300 on eBay to build the entire car. And they buy some really, really, you know, sketchy, really cheap parts, like $100 coilovers, things like that. Just it's, you know, you just got to be careful with stuff like that. But, you know, in my personal opinion, I think that the Miata is an incredible car. I think they're almost an they're not like an underdog car in my opinion, really. I think they're more like the overlooked gem. You know, I don't think they're a hidden gem, they're everywhere. I think they're overlooked. I think, you know, you can lump a lot of Miatas in the same way like, you know, Honda Civics are. Nothing wrong with Honda Civics, but there's just so many of them that a lot of people go, oh, hey, I want to buy a project car. Oh, I don't want a Miata. You know, I don't want a Civic. I don't want a WRX. There's so many of those, but you know, like a Miata is the overlooked gem. Like, so people go, oh, I want a Miata, but oh, there's so many Miatas. Let me buy an S2000. You know, in my opinion, if you want the Miata, buy the Miata. In my personal opinion, I think the Miata is a better car than the S2000. I know that's controversial. Like I said, it's just my opinion. I'm a little biased because obviously I own a Miata, but I've beat S2000s that have been track built on the track. You know, they make like 100 more horsepower than me, and I've beat them before. So, you know, S2000s are not inherently just a better car than Miatas. That's not true from what people say. You know, BMW's, the Z Roadsters, you know, the Z3s, I believe are the Z3s of the Roadsters, but the BMW Roadsters, same thing. You know, they're not just an inherently better car. I know this is, definitely, it's an opinion, so, obviously opinions aren't, are per person, but, you can't go wrong with the Miata, in my opinion. So don't let, if you're looking at a Miata, don't let anybody, bully you out of it. It'd be like, oh, why would you want a Miata? That's just a slow, junky car. They're not. I promise you, these things are incredible. So for anybody I've been able to help with this video, I'm sorry it kind of jumps around a little bit, as I wasn't really sure a lot of things to talk about in here. I just tried to talk about things that were in my personal experience. I really hope, if anybody's been on the fence about wanting to buy a Miata, I hope this helps you guys. Just, it's such a fun car. They're really fun to drive, really fun, really easy to take care of. The parts aren't very expensive for them. The community is incredible, but overall, I love this car. I'm going to keep this car forever. I'm going to buy other project cars for other things, like to build a sleeper or a rally car, but I am always going to keep my Miata. This is the car that means the most to me. It's near and dear to my heart. For anybody I was able to help with this, I really hope I was able to help you guys. And thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I'm going to wrap it up here. If you're new to my channel and you enjoyed the video, or if you've been existing to my channel, an existing viewer, and you enjoy my videos, don't forget to leave a like and leave a comment down below. And if you're either new and you really enjoy my video, or you've been finding yourself coming back to my channel and you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. It's completely free, completely optional, but it is the best way to support my channel, and it would mean a ton to me, guys, if you were to. As you know, I've been noticing the average views per video, my subscriber count, my average likes per video has been going up. So guys, it means a ton to me. Thank you so much. And for anybody who's looking at buying Miata, I really hope you guys buy one. I love to see you out there driving it. But thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.